Yo, check it out. It's your boy DJ L7. Oh my goodness. Today I have a very special guest. Super excited about this one for a multitude of reasons, right? Historically significant on multiple levels. I'm going to let this candidate introduce himself. Yo, this is a special one, folks. Check it out.
How you doing? My name is Isiah Vega. I am the Republican, Conservative, and Medical Freedom Party candidate in District 37, which covers Cypress Hills, Bushwick, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, City Line, and East New York.
Okay. And let's talk about some of the historically significant things, right? Besides being on the Medical Freedom Party, one of very significant. Also, I believe you're the youngest member to be running on the Republican ticket, things like that. Maybe there's even more significant things. Tell me a little bit more about what makes you special. I'm very excited to meet you.
Yeah, so I am the youngest designated candidate on the ballot this year. I am only 22 years old. So, there's a lot of, significance to that, because if I am elected, I will be the youngest, city council member in the city council, probably the youngest ever elected to the city council. And I'm not sure if, Medical Freedom Party would be the same, but I know I am the youngest Republican on New York City's ballot this year.
Okay. So, I think that it's kind of exceptional to be, at your age, to be involved in politics, at least to this level, right? You have to actually run as a candidate. What actually, tell us a little bit about your background politically, just so we can just start to understand what that's all about.
Oh, of course. So politically, I was never really involved. I never really knew what was going on with the parties. I always had an interest in helping out, but, the opportunity never really showed itself until last year when I decided, to volunteer for Juan Pagan, who was running against Nydia Velázquez in the 7th Congressional District. Okay. He was really the only local candidate to run in my area, and I live in Cypress Hills, so that's saying a lot. And because of that, I decided, this is going to be my entry into, helping out. And
I was involved in that race somewhat during the primary for Paperboy Prince, but actually he's been disappointing, so I just had to back off.
Yeah,
I guess Juan Pagan's more. Yeah, is he more in your area, like Cypress Hills, or what do you mean, Yeah, go ahead.
So Juan Pagan used to live in the Lower East Side. I know he decided to move out very recently. So when they were drawing the congressional district, I know the Lower East Side was part of the 7th. And then after, I believe, the whole debacle with the Independent Redistricting Commission and the lawsuits, they drew him out. However, he still decided to run in the 7th, and he worked very hard to, campaign in all the areas of the 7th Congressional, even though he knew his home wasn't going to be in the district. And, unfortunately, he didn't win, but he did perform the best against Nydia Velázquez in, I believe, the last 2 decades.
Okay. Just want to shout out Jay Renee. Actually, she's working on wrongful convictions and helping people who's in prison system. She's actually an ally from Delaware, and she also has work in, I believe, the Carolinas as well. A very key ally. I have candidates all across the nation that I work with. But we're going to learn that as time goes on. Shout out to Jay Renee. We'll be having you on the program again soon. We're actually working on a wrongful convictions, event to actually maybe even coincide with the Assange people and even be Abu Jamal. So it should be pretty high profile. I definitely remember. I look out for my friends, Jay Renee, and I will be pulling you back in. But once again, we're focusing on Isiah Vega at the moment, right? So you got involved with the Juan Pagan campaign, and did you stay working with him? Did you end up becoming an intern of his, or did you stay involved politically through him, or how did that end up developing?
So when I decided I was going to run for city council, I kind of brought it up that, I worked with Juan Pagan, and, a lot of people in the parties took notice to that. They like Juan, they respect Juan very much. And so, when I was interviewed, they actually said, is Juan helping you? And Juan is actually helping me in my run for city council. He's campaigning with me. He's out with me. We meet very regularly. And, there's big plans for Juan. I can't disclose what those plans are yet, but, in the future, look out for Juan Pagan.
Have you had any ever interactions with Sandy Nurse?
Yes. So when I did, I believe, a small press conference outside her office, we actually, you know, I actually confronted her about her and Jewish hatred stance. And, when I pressed her on that, not too hard, but, general confrontation, she said, if you want to know why I voted against end Jew hatred, please meet me in my office privately. You can call the number. So I never took that opportunity. I was told not to. But all of my interactions with Sandy Nurse have been cordial. We've been very respectful to each other. Frankly, I don't see it beneficial to my campaign that I talk about her. So I treat her with respect as I would treat any politician.
You know what? Personally, as an activist myself, I believe that I am actually excluded. I'm very highly qualified. There was recently a job opening at Mayday Space. I applied. They didn't even open up the resume. Actually, right, I've actually been in front of Mayday's events, right, at their big event. And I said, you know what? There wasn't an Asian American, performer at this event. There wasn't at the last event. There wasn't at the event before that. There won't be one at the next event, and there won't be one at the one after that. They sell themselves as inclusion, but actually it's only inclusion for certain people. And the fact of the matter is that I find myself completely locked out of being able to participate, getting funding or anything. I'm desperate for a candidate like yourself to get in, to give me a fair. I'm just asking for fairness. I'm not even asking for preferential treatment. I just want my resume to be looked at when I apply for the freaking job. What the hell, Sandy? You know what I mean? Stop playing games, honestly. I'm very qualified. And the fact that you want to fuck me over, that's a big mistake, because I'm a very hard worker. I'm going to be working on Isiah Vega's campaign because you locking me out. And just because of that, Isiah Vega gives me a chance where you don't. And thanks again for coming on the program. Sorry to vent a little bit. Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry to vent a little bit, but I'm working on these issues because we really need help on some really urgent issues. And thank you for addressing those. Okay, so now the Medical Freedom Party, just before we went on live on air, you revealed some actually new information, which is quite interesting. And once again, third party information, we see that the Libertarians and the Greens were denied ballot access in this particular election cycle. Maybe that's involved, maybe it's not. But what's going on with Medical Freedom Party?
So, as you may or may not know, we have, I believe, around 16 to 17 candidates on the Medical Freedom Party line this year. However, you mentioned the Libertarian and the Greens getting, losing ballot access. And part of what they passed last year, they passed a new law stating, any independent body that you're nominated to alongside, one or more parties. So if you're nominated for the Republican line and like an independent body like Medical Freedom, then you would have the independent body's information, like Medical Freedom, would be in the same column as the Republican line. So Medical Freedom Party is not getting its own ballot line this year. It's going to appear with one of the two parties that I've been nominated with. And I believe, that party will be the Conservative Party.
The fact that the Medical Freedom Party ran, I think, 8 candidates in the last cycle, like last year, was amazing. Should have been actually newsworthy, was never covered. This is actually very disturbing, and actually a reason why you should watch independent news programs like myself that are actually involved with third-party work, versus a lot of these newscasters, independent newscasters, supposedly, right, that are into third-party stuff, who can only recite what happened last year, the year before that, right? They're not really hip to what's going on now. It is what it is. But thanks again, once again, for that information. It's quite interesting to learn about what's going on. How do you think that affects do you think that affects you positively, negatively? What do you think are going to be the results of that?
So I was hoping that, Medical Freedom would be its own separate ballot line this year so that people would have, the opportunity to vote for Medical Freedom. And alongside that, any Democrats that would not, be inclined to vote Republican or Conservative would vote on that separate line. However, I believe, the state taking away that privilege to voters, really says a lot. They're afraid of independent bodies taking away from, their preferred candidates. So, honestly, it is a major frustration, but at the same time, I'm still going to move forward. I will say, just vote conservative. You're voting for medical freedom if you vote conservative.
Okay. So it's interesting that you use this term conservative. This is actually right. We have different people that classify themselves as different political ideologies, right? I'm a socialist, whatever that means. I'm a
Hmm.
right I don't even know if people even Marxism is capitalist. We have conservatives, right? Yeah. What is conservatism to you? What is your political ideology? Just to help us understand that.
So I would classify myself as a conservative with libertarian values. I believe in liberty. I believe in the right that, you have a say on what goes on with yourself. But as conservative, I believe, in the family unit. I believe, in backing our police for safer streets, fiscal conservatism, that we should, not spend so wildly like how the city council is spending, $106 billion right now. But, it's not me telling you what to do. It's valuing freedom over anything, really.
And being, rest of whatever that means, right? Yeah, even Martin Luther King has said, right, a lot of money that gets dedicated to the poor never reaches the people that are poor. Instead,
Mhm.
is sucked up by bureaucracy. I do appreciate conservatives, ability to see that versus other people that, because of good intentions or slogans, right, they end up, you know, following a line that actually hurts us, not looking at the end result. So once again, people like Sandy Nurse, I think, are kind of like in that category. Once, just going to be real with you, yeah, hurting actual minorities like myself, right? And the slogan of inclusion, right? That inclusion never includes someone like myself. So now Sandy's going to have to pay the price. It is what it is. Okay. Now the thing is that also people besides, right, they know your positions. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have this position, I have that position," but we want to know your accomplishments. So what have you actually? What do you? So when I ask this question, right, what are you most proud of achieving? Sometimes people say, "Oh, my kids," or something like that. I want to answer that's more relative, right, towards actually governance or the job that you're applying for. You know what I mean? So maybe you did a certain project, or maybe some activism, or maybe help push a law or something. What are you most proud of achieving?
Well, I've done a lot for this community. I've lived in this community for over a decade now, but I used to go to school here for 11 years, so I've been here almost my whole life. And it's really the simple things that I'm most proud of. Like there's potholes that I've reported. I've cleaned up the community multiple times, and we live in a very dirty community, unfortunately. And I think that's pretty relative. I've worked in student government. I've done events, small events, but even then, it's always about giving back to the community and working to make it better. And that's what I'm most proud of.
You know what? I'm actually just still trying to reach out to. I've had some conversations with LaGuardia Community College. I've actually collected the email addresses of student governments around the country, and I actually compiled a list of every single student government here in New York City. They're not really replying back. A lot of these student governments are too interested in doing parties instead of actually real action, where they get co-opted by student life into doing inane BS, and they're actually encouraged to be corrupted, which is really sad. But it's very exciting to see a candidate like yourself, once again from the younger generation, that can maybe inspire them to have a real conversation about real, political involvement versus the crap that's shoveled down their throats in these, college institutions that are not about empowering students, but rather teaching them to become good workers for the boss, right? So really appreciate your potential here, right, as a young person and as a student, and even as a former student leader. That's actually even more very attractive. And as someone who's active myself, the potholes and things like that, it's like the little things that you do that don't get celebrated that really that do make a difference. And really, I think differentiate between the people that are doing it for the clout versus the people that really do it from their hearts. You know what I mean? You might say a little insignificant thing, but little things add up, and little things do matter. And the details, people that really do care about the results and the details. Whereas people who are more interested in clout don't give a rat's ass. You know what I'm talking about?
Of course.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Okay, so now that we got to know yourself a little bit more, I'm going to actually switch to some of your positions, right? Yeah. I'm going to start off with actually my partners. I like to put my partners first, and I have a lot of them. Oh my goodness. So let's just start it off. Okay. So How do you feel about the freedom of Julian Assange? Are you down to free Julian Assange?
Uh, I'm not sure if this will be covered by the city council, but I believe Julian Assange should be freed.
Okay.
I think,
One thing that you
yeah,
know is I understand that may not be under the city council's purview, but the thing is that if we get like a majority of city council members who already agreed to this before the election cycle, and they all get elected, we could even say that New York City supports Julian Assange, and maybe even make that happen in other places around the country. You know what I mean? So New York City is actually the largest city in all of the nation, has the largest urban university system, has the largest subway system in the nation. We can be really a leader in so many things. Yeah. Now let's take a look at UBI. The Yang Gang is actually a community that I've worked with in the past. What are your feelings on UBI?
uh, I don't know too much on how UBI would affect our economics. It does sound nice on paper, but what does it really mean, in the future? People do need this money. I know, especially the homeless could benefit from it. However, we have to realize that we are spending a lot and we do need to cut on spending. But if some of that spending could be reallocated to UBI and without negatively affecting our economy, I think it's something that we should consider, in the future.
I appreciate that. UBI has worked in Texas to an extent, right? But also, a lot of the things that they say that are for us are weaponized against us. So I am very appreciative of your skeptical take, and I think you should be. A lot of things like welfare, these things are weaponized against the communities and don't end up really helping those communities. End up helping someone else. Like we said, like the money that's dedicated to the homeless. What was it? I think who's that governor we had that just got kicked out? Cuomo.
Yeah.
I think he had his like sister's cousin or something. Like they were paying like $400,000 a year to do like absolute crap for actually homeless people. We need that whole thing cleaned up. So hopefully people like yourself can really clean that up. So people might think that I'm just blindlessly supporting UBI. I'm not, but it's interesting your take, and maybe you could find some other supporters. I know there's the UBI Basic Income March, right? They've got like mayors around around the country that might be able to provide some support for your campaign. We'll see. Yeah. Or get you involved in some other coalition efforts. Another group that I work with that I do advocacy for is the disabled. And the thing is that right now, people with disabilities are allowed to be paid under minimum wage. And I understand, right, that they may have lower productivity for certain tasks, right? But the thing is that people with disabilities, if you look at minimum wage, it's kind of like a standard of living. And a lot of times they have extra costs. Would you support at least, right? I don't know if it's through government subsidies, right? It's hard to really mandate that a business pay people with disabilities when they're not producing as highly, but maybe through federal subsidies or something. Would you support at least a minimum wage, a standard of living for people that are with disabilities, at least?
I believe that we should expand, disabled relief, and not just, in the federal minimum wage, but here in our city, we know the disabled can't really get around. I mean, you look at the MTA. Not all stations are disabled accessible, ADA accessible, and especially in Broadway Junction, which is in my district, you have those long escalators. I don't know if you've ever been to Broadway Junction, but those long escalators, you can't put strollers, you can't put wheelchairs on them, and it's one of the largest transit hubs in all of the city. Of course, now they're making it ADA accessible, but it's not happening fast enough. And you also have to consider, the disabled live everywhere, no matter where you go. And I feel that there's a disproportionate amount of ADA accessible stations throughout the city. You look throughout, you'll find them in the very highly wealth concentrated areas. And, where's our bone? Throw us a bone, government. But that the MTA is a whole nother issue in terms of their spending. But I believe, we should expand, minimum wage and ADA accessible stations and, services to the disabled. Sometimes you don't ask for it and, sometimes it's accidental, but, we shouldn't fault people for having conditions they can't cure.
And there's already like a good amount of money in the disability sector, right? But the waste is incredible. Like we did a study on accessible pedestrian signals, and I think they're spending $30,000 to put accessible pedestrian signals on each intersection. when really the cost of the hardware would probably be maybe like 3,000, 4,000 max, but they're charging $30,000. Like, people are raking money in hand over fist, and people who's really suffering are the people with disabilities. Once again, we'll probably talk about further, but there's some signs that they have that are stickers, and how do you expect these blind people to read these signs? It's just like, really stupid. So there's a lot of this kind of, stuff going on with, so hopefully people like yourself could bring that under control, and thanks for being friendly to that community. Another community that I do advocacy for is the trans community. I know this is somewhat, so let me this is a hypothetical question, okay?
Okay.
Now the thing is that we know that people who in the trans community face a lot of discrimination, and we know that they may struggle to find jobs, and I get that. I'm not saying I approve of that, but they face job discrimination. They also face housing discrimination. So in this hypothetical, let's say that 10% of the public people applying for public housing are trans. And then we find that only 2% of the people that are in public housing are trans.
So
we say, what's going on? We ask the trans people what's going on. And they say that, we're getting beat up, we're getting discriminated against. Now, there's no law. Here's the question now. There's no law saying that you can discriminate against trans people. But they're still taxpayers, right? What can you do to ensure this community, right? Even though there's no law saying you discriminate against them, fair access to government services?
Well, all humans, deserve the same treatment. I don't believe in discrimination of anybody, regardless of your race, sex, gender, etc. So, anyone, if any person has the right to housing, like applying for lotteries or things like that, your race, your background, creed, gender, sex, it shouldn't matter. I believe that whatever freedoms are guaranteed to the common person should also be guaranteed for everybody. So in regards to discrimination, I don't believe in discrimination. And, if there's any point that we see discrimination, we will do everything we can to address it so that freedom is equal amongst everybody.
I really appreciate that. Yeah. By the way, I've asked every other candidate the same question, and you could actually see how some of them answered that. I appreciate your dedication to fairness. I just want to also provide just a little bit of my own just being someone who's friendly to the trans community, right? Provide my own little examination of the truth of what's going on here. Now, the fact of that is that when I returned to Hunter College as a post-bac student, I went to the LGBTQ club, and I said, what, like, what's going on with you guys? I want to find out how you guys are dealing with stuff. Now, the fact is that Jeffrey Parsons, right, who's actually some woke-ass professor, right, not saying that I'm against woke people and stuff, I found that he had actually gotten the whole LGBTQ club to fight for trans people, for gender-neutral bathrooms. I said, what, is this where you guys are fighting for? What about the job discrimination? What about the housing discrimination? Now, Jeffrey Parsons was recently found at Hunter College to be stealing money, right, and these academics decided where the fight is. They decided how to find the fight. And I challenge you right now, right, to ask yourselves, right, I'm not saying that, trans people, right, don't want to act best, but I challenge you to find, before these academics got involved, trans people saying that the front line of the fight was the bathroom access. What the crap is this? That wasn't what they were fighting before. Other people came in, once again, who came with the term Asian American, right? There's white Americans, black Americans. For some reason, we're less American than the rest of them. It was the academics who decided this, not the Asian American community ourselves. We didn't really have a problem with the term Oriental. Once again, I challenge them to show any studies, right, to show that Oriental people actually had a problem with the term. The narrative is made up for us, and they're deciding where the fight is. Stop believing the BS and start talking to actual people and who's been around the stuff, instead of some academics who decided where the fight is. Actually, I think they're actually harming the cause. Believe it or not. Yeah. Believe it or not.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So, Parsons, look them up. Yeah, we're also going to be examining some school stuff. But just head on some other people that I work with. I refer to something called Right to Repair. Are you a supporter of Right to Repair?
Yes, I am.
Cool.
I believe that's in regards to cell phones. Samsung, I think, is a big bottleneck around some people.
Yeah, Apple was one of the worst, but
Apple's one of the worst.
Picking up all of the bad habits, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Right to Repair actually also affects the disabled community as well. A lot of people. Yeah. So it's cool that we have an ally there. And by the way, Hochul, kneecapped, right? It passed in New York State, but in the end, she just kneecapped it, and basically it's useless, as the Democrats tend to do, right? Yeah.
Of course.
People want to call the Republicans the enemy, the wolf, right? Yeah. But what about the Democrats who could be the wolf in sheep's clothing? Which one's more dangerous, right? Yeah.
Of
Look,
course.
right? Yeah. You need to understand, right? Yeah, like your own interest in this. So thank you once again for coming on the program. I challenge any Democrats to come. I challenge Stanley Nurse to come on this program, right? I have a good history of activism for people with poor disabilities and overlooked communities. Why is Isiah Vega on this program and not her? Stop classifying these people what you think and actually look at the reality of the situation, right? Thanks again. Another group that I work with, by the way, is some groups that are fighting Citizens United. I don't know if you've heard of Citizens United.
I've heard of the lawsuit, Citizens United.
Okay. The idea is that corporations are people and can have unlimited free access to, make contributions because it's considered free speech. Would you be willing to stand against Citizens United?
From what I've heard of Citizens United, I believe I can stand against them. I don't believe corporations are people. I think a lot of PAC money has been flown through candidates, like in the millions, billions, trillions even. And, there's too much money in politics. You have to take a step back and look at what money has done in politics, and it's corrupted the U.S. especially. So I would stand against Citizens United. My campaign is all grassroots, no corporate money. So, and I intend to keep it that way. So,
one of the funny things about, unfortunately, the that movement, right? The fight against Citizens United is some of those groups, right? Yeah, are actually turned around by the money, right? Yeah, and actually we look at the results actually, and one thing that I like about conservatives is that they are actually a little bit more results based versus ideal pie in the sky. So the fact of the matter is that even though Wolfpack has received a lot of funding, they're actually in shambles, and they went from 5 states to 4. Meanwhile, Convention of States has actually got more than half the states needed to actually provoke a constitutional amendment, and they're fighting for term limits. They're fighting to reduce the power of the federal government and actually for a balanced budget. Are those and I think they could be strong allies. Do those sound like different positions you might be able to support?
I believe so, I suppose.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll be glad to put you in contact with Convention of States. We do have some events coming up mid-September, and maybe there's a way that we can actually, once again, fight for more reforms that would empower the people, right? And I appreciate your libertarian stance, as well as, people once again want to classify conservatives. It's so sad, but they need to just listen instead of judging and assuming. So thanks again. Yeah. All right. So those are basically my main partners, and as in terms of the race, what would you say is kind of like your core issue? I know you're a medical freedom party. Maybe that's your main issue. Maybe it's not. What are kind of like the biggest issues that you stand for, your area of expertise?
So the first one would be, the public safety issue. I believe everyone I've talked to has in some form mentioned that we don't feel safe. And, living on my block, I've seen, the chaos even come here to my own residential block, where there was a man that was chasing somebody, harassing them. And he seemed to have, a mental disability, which is unfortunate. But, the bail reform policies that the progressive left has passed in the state legislature has taken a toll on our city. And the fact that our police, are not supported in our community has also led to, some degradation. So that is one issue and probably my main issue that I've been focused on. The medical freedom issue is, my second issue. The mandates seem to be coming back. Mayor Adams has left it, I guess, how would you say, open-ended. The schools are now even saying that we might shut down, and a lot of people are getting angry, saying we will not comply. And, I think it's the perfect time to, advertise medical freedom. We're against the mandates. We don't want any more mandates. We want people to have the choice whether or not they want to get, an experimental vaccine or not. And, my third main issue would also be the community. I believe, in my area, the politicians have abandoned us. They don't listen to us anymore. You don't see them anywhere. And I want to restore that relationship between the government and the community. I
You're
want
doing
people
it right here, right now. Appreciate that. Yeah, Sandy Nurse, where you at? Where you at, Sandy? Yeah, where you at? And so I just want to throw that in there. I really appreciate you. Yeah. One thing I just want to also say for my audience right now is you guys know that I work on wrongful convictions. We see Jay Renee in the chat. I'm also want to shout out 12 Bales. Thanks for checking out the show. Now, the thing is that just so you know, a lot of people want to come down on Texas, and unfortunately, Texas does have, a high, the death rate, right? Yeah, they have the death penalty, and a lot of people do die down there. But just so you know, actually, out of all the states in the nation, Texas is number one as in terms of overturning wrongful convictions and exonerating people that have been wrongfully convicted. Not only that, but they also have one of the best, right? Yeah, compensation packages for people that have been wrongly convicted versus Pennsylvania, a swing state, right? Vincent Motor, the first man freed on DNA evidence in Philly, Pennsylvania history, has not been compensated to this day 20 years later, right? Yeah, supposedly Democratic controlled state. Where's the benefits? Where's the actual, right? Yeah. So once again, there's a lot of spin that's placed on the facts. People, right, might assume that, hearing criminal, they hear Republican and they say, this person is against all, people that's locked up. Not necessarily, actually, right? If they make it wrong, they're more willing to admit it when they've made a mistake and to take corrective action versus, right, progressives, once again, who play, in my experience, cancellation games, which I don't appreciate. Yeah. So would you support, right, compensation for people that have been wrongfully incarcerated? We're trying to do a national push for this.
I would say so, yes, because if you've been wrongly incarcerated, why should you not get anything for serving time?
Yeah, that's a severe, experience to go through. That's a traumatic experience. Plus, you're probably doing work for the state at pennies on the dollar. I mean, damn, like just that, like just the labor that you end up doing, you should just be compensated at least, a fair rate, and the costs on the trauma experience and stuff. Thanks for actually, once again, right? Where's Sandy Nurse at? You think that she's helping out people with wrongful convictions? You think she's helping out people that's poor? You think she's helping out street artists? Isiah Vega, man. Yeah. How can people find your stuff? How can people, support your campaign, sign up to donate and all this other thing? What's your contact information?
So the easiest way to volunteer or to donate is to go to my website, vega4citycouncil.com. It's VEGAFOR citycouncil.com. You can donate, you can volunteer. That's the best way to reach me. If you sign up to volunteer, I'll get back to you right away. $10 is all I need. I am trying to get the matching funds, but if you can donate more than $10, that'll be greatly appreciated. This is all grassroots. This is all,
okay,
at the base level.
And let me just tell you guys, there's a lot of like twisted things going on in New York City electoral politics. Here's one of them, right? Yeah, if I remember correctly. For the mayoral race, I forgot what city council, but for matching funds, right? There's a sick thing going on here where they call publicly funded elections. Sounds great on paper, right? Yeah. So what they do is for every $1 you raise, you get $8 back, which is insane, right? But then the thing is that, right, in order to qualify for mayor, you have to raise $250,000. So the only people benefiting off the public funded elections are the millionaires. You know what I mean? And it's just absurd and wrong. I don't know if the qualifications for city council, hopefully it's achievable, right? Yeah.
It's very achievable.
Okay.
I'm about halfway there, so.
Oh, well, hell yeah, let's go then. You know what I mean? Once again, right, if he gets to that number, then that makes it much more possible for him to hire staff. It makes it much more possible for him to actually, right, yeah, get the message out there, which is actually suppressed by the media. Once again, why, if you never heard of Medical Freedom Party, ran 8 candidates. Greens didn't even run one candidate, right? They didn't even have ballot access. But all the discussion now, green, where's the Medical Freedom Party at? Right? Yeah, it's rigged. Stop believing the BS. Yeah. Now that people have your information, Vega from New York, right? Yeah. Definitely gonna check that out. what do you got coming up in the future? Is there anything people got looking forward to? Maybe some campaign events? Maybe, right? What's up?
So, we're working to get campaign events. But for now, I'm just door knocking, doing all the grassroots stuff, letting people know that I am running. I am one of the candidates. Make a change in November. But if you want to get involved, if you volunteer, you'll be in the know of when all of the campaign events are going to happen. And we'll see what happens. I'm pretty confident in this race. I'm pretty sure we can win. So I'm going to do my best.
12 Veils just brought up an issue that I was actually just going to bring up myself. Yeah, this is actually, she's talking about asylum seekers being mistreated in Staten Island, upstate New York. Poco's not helping the issue of refusing to allow access to other areas of New York State. Now, the thing is that being Asian American myself, I do know quite a few undocumented Chinese, right, other ethnicities that are here already, right? Yeah, before even the migrant crisis. Are you actually are you first generation American, second generation?
On my mom's side, I'm first generation. On my dad's side, we've been here as long as Puerto Rico's been a colony.
Okay. So, also, so you're Puerto Rican, or 100% Puerto Rican, or partial?
Partial. Half Puerto Rican, half Peruvian.
Okay. So, right, what's your take on the migrant situation?
Well, it is a very complicated situation. I can tell you my family's not very happy of, this whole skipping the line, the taxpayer dollars. People have to do this the right way. We have laws. If you're seeking asylum, you have to file for asylum in the first country that you end up in. And for a lot of these people, it's Mexico. So if they did not file for asylum in Mexico, technically they already broke the law, because that's how, I believe it's in the Geneva Convention. I believe it's in, somewhere in the UN, there's a document saying if you're seeking asylum, this is what you have to do first. And unfortunately, they did break the law, but for some of them, they might not have. And for those, families, they're not being vetted. Some of them are ungrateful. It's very complicated. But for those that did follow every procedure, we should be, working to get them what they need.
Okay.
But like I said, it's very complicated, and we have to start vetting them. We have to start knowing where they're coming from, because there's a lot of single men that come from El Salvador, and El Salvador's locking up every criminal. So we don't know who we're letting in. We have to make sure, these are well-meaning people with good intentions, because if not, the city is going to collapse into chaos.
I understand. Yeah, there's people that are fleeing from something. If that monster comes here, then will we be fleeing? Yeah, it's like I can understand cause for concern there. Okay, that's cool. Just also, since 12 Veils was there, I was actually last night at the Chelsea Houses. There's actually a lot of, I don't know if you've heard of this, but real estate is actually considered the number one corrupting factor in local politics. There's a lot of rezoning going on, a lot of rebuilding, a lot of developers messing around with different, even public housing. I don't know if you've heard the Penn Station issue. That's not in your district, but do you have any particular opinions on public housing, or once again, where most vulnerable live there? Elderly, people who are retired, sometimes veterans. What's your position on public housing, or developers coming in and uprooting different communities and gentrification, this type of thing going on?
So yeah, I do have a bit of public housing in my district. I know there's some in Ocean Hill and Brownsville, and some in Bushwick as well. Not so much in Cypress Hills anymore, but I believe public housing needs to start meeting the codes that we enforce for other buildings. A lot of these places are run down. They don't have clean water. They don't have heat. They don't have, cool air to stand the heat, which we are facing right now as we speak. And, NYCHA has to stop being neglected. The city, exploits NYCHA so that people can move out, and then they can start making this into luxury developments. And, we have to stop it. We have to protect NYCHA. We have to protect its residents, and we have to make sure that they have safe living conditions, because, these are people as well, people that have fallen hard times, people that have lived and through hard times, through their entire life. We just can't, force them out and throw them to the dogs in the streets. We have to protect these people, and we have to make sure, they can live.
I'll send you a Facebook post later showing Jerry Nadler like selling out the community. So thanks again for once again, people think that one group is selling them out and another group is saving them. Better look it up, right? The person who ran against Nadler, Zambluski, who I actually have a campaign shirt of his, he also supported public housing, right? Yeah. There's idea of compassionate conservatism, right? But that's not marketable through certain outlets. We can all work together, right? Yeah, we can all work together on humanitarian ideals. And once again, I really appreciate you coming on the program today. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to do more work with you. Any other thing you want to mention before I sign off?
Well, if you live in my area, please make sure to vote for me on the Republican or conservative lines in November 7th. Early voting starts October 25th and ends on November 5th. If you can, help out, donate, whatever works for you, but your support is enough. Thank you.
Okay. Last thing I'm going to say is just shout out 12 Vales. She said 9 residents represent 1 out of every 9 New Yorkers. That may be true, but I don't know if they represent 1 out of every 9 voters. Okay, mobilization is very important for that community. Just so you know, too, I also work with Theo Chino. Maybe the Medical Freedom Party is hooking you up with this. We have the voter rolls of everybody who's voted in the area. I think Dion Powell also has that if you ever work with him. So I'm definitely very interested in making sure that you win this race and I can provide some high quality assistance. And I'm going to be there, man. Isiah Vega, remember the name. You're going to see me doing some stuff with him real soon. All right. That's what's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I just hit